The typical primary care doctor takes care of maybe a panel size of 2,000 individuals, and they care for those 2,000 individuals. But imagine a world where it's 25,000.
Welcome to our series, Medscape 2050. With us, we're honored to have Dr. Harrington today, who I've had the pleasure of knowing a long time. I want to start with a very open-ended question. When you think about the future, whether it's 5 or 10 or 15 years down the line, where does your mind go?
As your audience knows, I'm a cardiologist, and I spend a lot of my time thinking about heart disease. And an amazingly depressing paper came out this past year that was on the cardiovascular disease burden in the United States in 2050. And if certain things don't change about how we take care of ourselves, the burden of cardiovascular disease in 2050 is going to be enormous. So across what I'll call the mission areas of clinical care, education, research, of academic medicine, I think about all of the tools that are coming into the scene that are entering healthcare, things like artificial intelligence. What do we need to teach medical students? And what do we need to arm them with as a set of skills, particularly if they're going to face a world where there still is, cardiovascular disease to a large extent, where there's new therapies, new technologies, new way of treating people? What are the tools that we have to give medical students in order to not just survive, but how are they going to thrive? How are they going to be the doctors of tomorrow?
That's really interesting. Are there certain developments or vectors you've seen in the science coming along or new modes that get you most excited?
I think the data sciences are going to be an area that's going to really influence the biologic sciences, and it's going to really influence how we think about everything from basic molecular discovery to the production of new drugs, to thinking about engineering cells to treat certain conditions.
Do you think we get to a point where there's almost a working model of every patient?
I think it will. Now, the resolution on cardiac CT and CT angiography is extraordinary, to be able to not just look at, there's a stenosis. No. We can take you down into the plaque and say, this is a plaque that has a lot of lipid in it, that has a lot of cholesterol in it. And this looks to be the kind of plaque that might rupture and lead to things like heart attack. Well, what if we can use that information to then select people for whom we might do coronary intervention on? So what it's allowing us to do is hone in on the people that might really benefit from the invasive technologies by learning about them non-invasively. So yeah, I think it's going to get better and better. It's going to get cheaper and cheaper, faster and faster. One of our spine surgeons at Weill Cornell was talking about some of the innovative approaches that he and his team have to spine surgery. And he made reference to the fact that he doesn't do an operation anymore without 3D printing. So that, you can take the images, the CT scans, the MRIs, and all of this, the images get processed in a way that's amenable to 3D printing. And then before you do the operation, think about it. You can look exactly where you're going to be. And I can think about all of this before I even step into the operating room. I mean, how fantastic is that? Or think about children with congenital heart disease who have to undergo all sorts of procedures to repair the congenital abnormalities. Advanced 3D imaging and 3D printing is going to help with that, because just like the spine surgery, if these things can be planned ahead of time, it's going to make it better. Boy, tell me that's not going to help surgeons plan their approach if they can really think about, looking inside the heart, where this defect is and how might I approach it, and what's going to be the safest way to approach it, and what's going to be the most complete way to get a repair here. So I think that imaging, to me, guided by newer technologies, is going to be one of the big advances that then will allow us to more effectively take care of people.
What's required to unlock that from a technology perspective?
I think improvement in imaging, which will in part come with things like artificial intelligence, making the algorithms more efficient, more refined. As the imaging gets better and faster and more complete, it's going to give us insights of things you didn't even know about. I think you're going to see miniaturization where And I think you're going to see people be able to think about, through using virtual reality, of being able to place oneself inside, say, an organ. You remember the old, voyage through the body, that's sort of where we're going, and be able to understand how do things interact with one another.
You've run a couple of the most prestigious medical education institutions on the planet. How different do you think a med school experience could look 20 years from now, say?
Well, first off, I think that medical school training paradoxically might be shorter as opposed to longer. A lot of education has ended up prior to the current age of, teaching people facts. But why would you do that? And when facts are so easily looked up, and acquired rapidly at the bedside. But in fact, if you're not trying to cram in a bunch of facts because those facts are readily accessible in real time, then what do we want to teach them? In some ways, there's, in many ways, maybe some of the social skills of being able to care for people. Maybe we'll have an opportunity to spend more time doing that. Because at the end of the day, and I don't think this is going to change, medicine is still largely a caring profession. And how do we teach that? And well, you teach that in some ways through experience. And I think we'd like to get them into the experience of caring for people sooner.
Do you think it allows some of the down market licenses to be better leveraged in the system? Like, what do you think the impacts are around all of this?
I think what we're going to see is technology is going to enable the practice of clinical medicine to look really different. I think it's going to be done more and more through team-based approaches to care. The typical primary care doctor takes care of maybe a panel size of 2,000 individuals. And they care for those 2,000 individuals. But imagine a world where it's 25,000, and instead the primary care doc has a PA or a team of PAs, a team of nurse practitioners, and now the doctor is part of the team, and maybe the doctor's helping direct the team. And the primary care doctor, the general internist, really gets called in for the difficult consultative cases. Well, now maybe your person who wants to be a primary care doctor, we've got to get them leadership training, and we got to get them skills that they can actually lead a team. Maybe they have to understand a lot of other things other than biomedical science. I think that if you really want to succeed in the coming world, you want to be able to both develop the biology part of your brain and the computational part of your brain.
Do you think some of the instruction will be done potentially by agents or AIs? And do you think some component of the patient care will be done by those?
I don't think it's going to be all human delivered at all. I think that there's going to be these combinations of tools, technologies, including things like chatbots to actually deliver some types of care.
And now everyone's working with meta AI tools. So you're a cobot in every situation in order to be productive. And it probably came first in the technology field, but I do think it's coming everywhere. What concerns you? Are there things about the brave new world out in front of us that keep you up at night?
The whole thing depends upon reliable data and reliable information. And what worries me are when bad actors could introduce unreliable data, the so-called disinformation or misinformation. I do think there needs to be some caution, and I think people need to think about it, and I think they need to think about when does a tool help and when might a tool not necessarily help. I, as a clinician, if I want to utilize the tools of data science, I need to have some basic understanding of the math that's being used and some basic understanding of some of the technology, including some of the computer science. Now, I am never going to be a computer scientist, and it's likely my computer scientist friends are never going to be a cardiovascular medicine specialist. And that's why the best science is going to be done still by teams of people who are bringing together different skill sets.